read quite a bit in there. So I'll give you a sec if you want to get your Bible or your iPad or your whatever. Go to Mark chapter 8. Now I'm going to read it from my screen with you. All right. In Mark chapter 8 and verse 1 is where we're going to begin. In those days, the multitude being very great and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples unto him and said unto them, I have compassion on the multitude, because they have now been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away fasting to their own houses, they will faint by the way, for the divers of them came from afar. And his disciples answered him, From whence can a man satisfy these men with bread here in the wilderness? And he said, How many loaves do we have? They said, 7. And he commanded the people to sit down on the ground, and he took the 7 loaves, and he gave thanks, and broke, and gave to his disciples to set before them. And they set them before the people. And they had a few small fishes, and he blessed them, and commanded them to set them before them. Sorry, Heidi, can you let her in? Page. All right. So they ate and they were filled, and they took up the broken meat that was left, 7 baskets. And those who had eaten were about 4,000, and he sent them away. So then in verse 10 it says, And straightway he entered into a boat with his disciples and came into the region of Dalmanutha. So a lot of people have been hanging out with him for several days, and he knew they were hungry, and he was moved with compassion. I love it when God moves with compassion. Oh. And he said, Hey, we got to feed these guys. I can't send them away until I've fed them physical food. Gave them spiritual food, need to give physical food. So he gave thanks. Gratitude multiplied everything. Gratitude multiplied everything. Prayed over it and fed them, and then he sent them away. And now they're on a boat and they're going to this place. So after they get there, the Pharisees in verse 11 came forth and began to question with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven, testing him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit. I love that. It's so real. Been there, done that. Why doth this generation seek after a sign? Verily I say unto you, there shall no sign be given unto this generation. And he left them and entered into the boat, departing to the other side. Now, I think I see this next verse, verse 14, kind of in parentheses. Now the disciples had forgotten to take bread. Neither had they in the boat with them more than 1 loaf. Parentheses end. And verse 15, and Jesus says to them, and he charged them, saying, Take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herod. I want to take a second to figure out what does he mean by that. So I looked up a few commentaries on this. I wanted a deeper understanding. And one said Herod knew his status as a ruler was tenuous. He gained and maintained his power throughout brute force and political manipulation. He had little support from the common people around Jerusalem. Discontent with his rule was so high that a spark could create a firestorm of revolution. Herod lived in fear. The Herodians are often mentioned in the Gospels at the same time as the Pharisees. Like the Pharisees, the Herodians wanted political independence from the Jewish people. Unlike the Pharisees, who sought to restore the kingdom of David, the Herodians wished to restore a member of the Herodian dynasty to the throne in Judea. Allegations that the Herodians regarded Herod himself as the Messiah. Jesus refers to the yeast of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. Jesus' point was that the teachings of the Pharisee were perverse and produced hypocrisy and unbelief. The Pharisees displayed an outward conformity to the law, but their hearts were full of unbelief and sinfulness. By warning the disciples against the hypocrisy of leaven of the Pharisees, there's a relationship there. Pharisees, Jesus sought to keep his followers from an insidious influence that would undermine faith and corrupt their walk with God. So he had a point. I am learning to bake bread, and if you put just a little leaven or yeast in 4 cups of flour and you add some warm water, the 4 cups of flour expand and expand. So a little bit of leaven changes 4 cups of flour. So he's telling them, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Herodians, it's all fear-based, but beware of it because it will grow. So here's my favorite part. Here's my point to this whole thing. Ready? Verse 16. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, it is because we have no bread. What? You just saw Jesus turn these loaves into loaves to feed thousands and these fish into fish to feed thousands by just giving thanks, right? You just saw that. And then you get in a boat, you go here, and he has this conversation with these guys, and he's in deep thought. It was a deep conversation. He sighed deep in his spirit, like it was a spiritual moment. And he comes to them, he's like, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Herodians of Herod. And they're like, it's because we forgot bread. Why was that their response to such a deep moment, even though they'd just seen miracles a little bit before? Because of sin consciousness. They were more focused on the fact that they blew it, so they missed the point. I want to talk about fear for a second. Fear shrinks. Love expands. When someone is in a place of fear, their logic goes away. How do I know this? Because I can tell you this from a scientific perspective. I could read you lots of quotes, but I tried to make this a little shorter. Literally, the lobes in the front that are your logic shut down when you're in fear and goes back into here into fight or flight mode. So logic gets set to the side when I'm in a state of fear. Have you ever talked to someone in a state of fear and you're like, because it's so I want to read this quote that I got from Forbes. It's kind of interesting. We have a lot of knowledge about what happens when we are in a constant state of fight or flight. And those examples come from a syndrome like PTSD, experiencing terrible situations for a long period of time. Here we come to a concept of brain plasticity, which basically means that what you're experiencing can change your brain. It can make your brain grow so that it's nice and fluffy and strong, or it can shrink down. So let me ask you, have you ever heard don't shrink in fear? When we're in a state of fear, we shrink. Our blood vessels shrink. We get high blood pressure because there's pressure on the flow of blood because we're shrinking in fear. Well, what's the opposite of that? When I'm in a state of love, I expand. And when I expand, I grow, and I grow, and I grow. And when I'm in a state of love and I walk into your presence, I have a positive effect on you because my span is so big in a state of love that it radiates to hundreds of thousands of people. That is the impact that you make without even saying a word when you're in a state of love. And how do you get in a state of love the quickest? Gratitude. Jen and I just talked about this morning. Gratitude. The fastest way to go from fear, doubt, worry, self-pity. You ever been there? You ever seen someone in self-pity? You want to go, lady, come on. You want to shake them? When we're in that place, we're so low. There's a spiral. Jeremy showed me this spiral of emotions. And at the top is love, right? Love. But all the way at the bottom of the spiral that squeezes in and tightens is fear, worry, doubt, self-pity, guilt, shame. That's at the bottom of the spiral. And when we're there, we're shrunk. We're living small. So we got to get ourselves up because I am the only one that can get me up. You can't get me up. You can't get me to rise my emotions to a higher state of being because only I can transform by the renewing of my mind. So I am responsible to see that I'm in a place of self-pity, find one of those promises that cannot be shaken, that cannot be torn away, get into gratitude and thankful for those promises till I can rise to an expanded place to where I can be in a place of love. Because remember, fear shrinks, but love expands. That's the place we want to live in. In the article entitled Do It Afraid, Joyce Myers writes, you see, Satan wants us to shrink back in fear and to live tiny. Useless lives. However, God desires for us to live free from the effects of fear and live big, fulfilling lives. He wants us to enjoy freedom and creativity unhampered by fear. Have you ever seen the analogy or heard the analogy that you're the light of the world? Have you ever heard that? I think about a lighthouse. My mom and I had this amazing conversation yesterday. I got to spend a couple hours with her. And every time I do, we speak the word with each other and life and light. And one of the things while talking with her that I saw in my spirit was this analogy. A lighthouse has one job. You are the light of the world. You are a lighthouse and you have one job. And your job is to shine. Do you, as a lighthouse, look out and go, oh, oh, I see that big wave coming. Oh, no. Do you, as a lighthouse, go, oh, you over there, you over there? No, you just shine. A lighthouse has one job, and it's to shine. And as you shine, you do your job. And the waves don't matter. And the people that need to see your light, and they're drawn into you. They're drawn into a safe harbor. But your job is not to worry about the storm, not to even worry about the people. You're just supposed to shine. That's what we do. When we're in a state of love, we shine, we radiate, we expand to the world. The greatest way to change the world is to change you. When you are transformed by the renewing of your mind and you're in a state of love and grace and gratitude, it changes everything around you. Even the room you're in, the street you're on, the city you live in has a positive effect when you just do your job. Shine. Shine as a light. Neil Donald Walsh said, fear is energy which contracts, closes down, draws in, runs and hides, hoards, harms. Love is the energy which expands, opens up, sends out, stays, reveals, shares, and heals. Now, I'm in the real estate business, and I'm not just in the go buy fancy houses and sell fancy houses business. I don't do that. I go buy crappy houses, stinky, smelly houses, and sell those because nobody wants those. It's a great market. But in this process, we have been in many, many hoarding houses. And the one thing that I can tell you that is in common with all of them is the smell. They all have the same smell. They're totally different people with totally different trash, but it's the same smell. And I call that smell the absence of love. When there is an absence of love, there is an odor that is not a sweet smelling odor. The absence of love isn't always just seen as something drastic like a hoarder home, but the absence of love means it's fear that dominates. Because what is our verse that mature love casts out fear? When there's an absence of love, what takes its place? Fear, right? So wherever you see frustration, there's an absence of love. Kick your love in. Whenever you see anger, there's an absence of love. Kick in your love. Whenever you see confusion or chaos or manicness, there's an absence of love. We're connected to the source of love, the source. I may not always have the book in front of me, but I always have the author with me. Always. He's the source of love. He's the source of light. He's the source of goodness. And it is God in Christ inside of me. So no matter where I'm at, no matter what's going on, no matter what I'm thinking, I have the source of love inside of me. And that fast, I can transform, change my mind, and get to a high state of love, and then radiate and expand to the world around me. Because I'm connected to the source of love, the ultimate. He is so good to me and everybody else and everything else. He's even good to the birds. He's even good to the trees. He's good to everything because he is love. So if I want to be like my dad, I just need to expand my love. It's not hard. I have one job, shine. I'm a lighthouse. I don't have to worry about the storm. I don't even have to worry about the travelers finding the light. That's their job. They'll find it. All I got to do is shine. I'm responsible for my joy, my happiness, and my mood and my mode. And only I can transform by the renewing of my mind. So I work on that daily. Rise up. Come on. Do your job. One job. Just shine.